Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. Okay, let's do a recap of week 18 of the marathon training. Week 18 took place from the 11th of September to the 17th of September. It's also the final week of the taper and pretty much the race week. Okay, so Monday was a bit of rest, a bit of walking. It's also the last day I did my strength work. Yeah, after the Monday, I pretty much just took it easy for the rest of the week. No more strength work, but I still kept up with like foam rolling, mobility, stretching, and that kind of stuff. Tuesday was 11 k's of recovery. I feel like some light trails, so why not? Did that at Saltpan Creek and Riverwood. I don't think there was much smoke that morning, so the air quality was quite decent. Felt pretty decent overall for recovery. Wednesday was a dress rehearsal run, so pretty much like testing race gear and race pace, I guess. It was supposed to be like around 11 k's of running with like around 3 k's of marathon pace as well. I ended up doing an evening round in the morning because there's just simply too much smoke in the morning, like, you know, from the hazard reduction burns. I did it with the Roads Runners guys and did the initial course, did like 10 k's total, and then tried to chuck in like around 2 k's of marathon pace at the end. And honestly, it didn't feel that great for some reason. It might be because I was running in the evening, but I didn't want to think it was an indication of how I was going to perform in the race. So yeah, it was fine, I guess. Thursday was 8k recovery. Again, it was very smoky in the morning, so I didn't do my run in the morning. I just did it in the early afternoon instead. This time I did it along the Parramatta to Liverpool Railside Trail. It's like a really nice paved cycleway that runs along like the trail lines, and like it's great for like walking, running, or commute or whatever. However, it was also quite warm at this time. It was like around 27 degrees out there. But surprisingly, it wasn't too unbearable because I think I was just going at recovery pace. I also went to the Sydney Marathon Expo on Thursday to collect my racing bib and stuff. This time it was held in the venue in Alexandra, and yeah, it was a different location compared to last year, which is like Lower Town Hall. I think it's because they needed a lot of space for all their like exhibitors, event partners, and like charities, I guess. And there was like over 75 of it apparently. So yeah, it was much more spacious and there was much more going on this year than last year, I guess. But location wise, it wasn't the best. I feel like they should just held in the city somewhere, like maybe the ICC or something. Yeah, somewhere that's a bit more accessible for most people. So yeah, I got my bib, I did the baggage drop, and then I moved on to the ASICS merch section. There's plenty of merch to buy, but yeah, I didn't really buy anything. There's also a lot of shoes on display on the walls. I was kind of curious about their flagship shoes, like their racing shoes, I guess. So I kind of asked the sales rep guy there, I think his name was Yuya or something. Yeah, he was kind enough to like help me out and like let me try on the shoes as well. I asked him to try on their carbon plated racing shoe, which is the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. It was either that or the Metaspeed Edge Plus or something. And the moment I put on the Metaspeeds, it felt like wider and more accommodating in terms of fit than my Saucony Endorphin Pro Freeze. And this was a pretty important realization at the time because it just made me realize that the Endorphin Pro Freeze weren't as roomy as I would have liked. And if I had tried on the Metaspeeds at any time before like I bought the Pros, I would have highly considered it over the Pro Freeze just from the fit alone. Anyways, I didn't get to run on them or anything. I just wore it, walked around in it, see how it fit. It felt so light, and I'd assume it'd be quite fast as well. And then I saw the super big stack shoe, which is the Super Blast. I was like, hey, can I please try it on as well? And he's like, yeah, sure. And once he brought it out, I held it in my hand. It was quite tall. It was like taller than all my shoes basically, but like it was very light at the same time. Again, once I put it on, very accommodating fit, pretty wide. Didn't get to run in them again, but yeah, like just felt very light and comfortable. I'm not sure if I'd feel stable running like those kind of tall shoes, but felt very light for how clunky they appeared. It was also slightly firm as well, just from like standing around it. But I'd assume it'd feel much better and like probably more responsive when you run in them, I guess. And then I moved on to all the booths. I saw a lot of brands and products all related to running, like, you know, hydration, running belts, socks, massage guns, and so on. Like, it was pretty interesting, like it's pretty fun. I also managed to try some Pixel water as well. Might as well give it a try before the race, I guess. Wasn't really a fan of the flavor or the aftertaste. It was like an organic medicine version of Gatorade, I guess. So yeah, and then I went to the big like promo war or whatever, and then yeah, just tag my name on there, Rob on the run, I guess. I didn't realize how big I was riding until like I looked at it afterwards. So yeah, the expo was a pretty fun experience overall. Friday was supposed to be 8k recoveries with some speed work at the end. It was supposed to be like around 6 per 100 meter strides. I'd figure I'd do the recovery on grass because I didn't do any recovery on grass the whole week, I guess. Did it at Bankstown City Sports Complex. For that morning, there was a bit of smoke, but it wasn't that bad. But at the same time, it still wasn't great. I felt pretty decent, I guess, and then the strides went okay as well. Saturday was supposed to be 6k's of recovery. I just did that Rhodes Park run. I met up with Chris and Morgan for that park run, and they both decided to like go pretty slow. Still pretty fast, unfortunately. I think we went at like around 5-minute pace. There was no smoke that morning, which is great, but we were starting to feel the heat a bit. It was probably like around 20 to 23 degrees at most at the time, and it was already feeling quite warm. Overall, recovery went pretty well. I would have preferred to go a bit slower, but it was fine, I guess. That brings the total mileage for the week, excluding the marathon, to like around 45 kilometers. Pretty much went as planned, but the schedule was kind of thrown off a bit because I didn't always run in the mornings as I wanted to, because, you know, due to the smoke from the hazard reduction burns. Overall, I reckon the final week of the table went pretty well. Okay, let's get into the race day, I guess. I slept pretty early the night before. Like I slept like around 9:15 or something, and then woke up around 4:15. So like around 7 hours of sleep, which isn't too bad. But also like the sleep wasn't too great either because of how warm it was the night before. I got pretty decent breakfast. It was like overnight oats, dates, like 2 bananas, some leftover raisin toast, a bagel, apple and also some peanut butter. Honestly, it was like plenty of food, I reckon. And pretty much the same thing I've always had for like my long runs or like my tune-up races, but probably a bit more than usual. I got myself ready, chucked on a lot of sunscreen as well. And then I set out on time and to take the train to Milsons Point. Also brought like a little water bottle on the train to like sip on just in case. Got there like around 6:30, but it was quite delayed at the station because of how packed it was. So I think we got off at like around 6:40, I guess. And the moment I stepped out of the station, I felt how warm it was already. It was supposed to be like around 18 degrees that morning, like around 7 AM by the time the race starts. It was already quite sunny and warm, and like I don't think anyone was looking forward to it. I kind of need to pee a bit, so yeah, I was kind of like scrambling around looking for toilets. Porta potties at the start area were way too packed, and like yeah, like I think if I line up for the toilets there, I don't think I'll make it for the race in time. I figured I might as well just start warming up, you know, try to find something else to pee, I guess. I just started doing like a little jog around the Kirribilli area. Eventually managed to find a bush to pee in, I guess. Time was running out pretty quickly before the start came, and it was like around 6:50, so yeah, just try to quickly rush to warm up. Didn't get to do that many dynamic movements or like drills, I guess. By the time I got back to the start line, it was like around 7 to 7:05, and it was like so packed. Somehow I managed to find Chris and Morgan in the crowd. By this time we were pretty much in the middle of our starting group, which is like group the Wave A. I think in the distance we could see like the 3:30 paces and the 3:15 paces, but we couldn't see the 3 hour paces. Like all of them were like at least 100 meters away, so yeah, it was very crowded at the start. I think based on where we were, I think there's like over 1,000 people in front of us. So yeah, the gun goes off and it takes us like a good 2 minutes before we actually got to the start line, you know, of walking and like a slow jog. And Chris and Morgan went straight out. I pretty much like lost him in the first 10 minutes of the race, I guess. But I decided to like take it really slow at the start because I didn't get like a proper warm up before the race. The first 2Ks are pretty chill, I guess. Like it was like going across the Harbour Bridge and along the Western Distributor. It's probably like the widest parts of the whole race, but like at the same time it was the most crowded as well. In my mind I was thinking, oh man, like this is very similar to the City Surf race, I guess, like based on where we started and how it was going, like how packed it was. Like, do I start dodging and waving or not? But I feel like it's a marathon. It's way longer than City Surf. And like, I pretty much agreed to myself that I wasn't gonna go hard at the start. And then once I got to like around the 5K mark, which is like around Piedmont, I think it was getting a bit better. Maybe at the start there was like around 2,000 people in front of me, but now there's like around 1,000 people, so it wasn't that bad. It's still very crowded, but it wasn't that bad. From 5 to 10K, it was like mostly around Piedmont. It was quite nice actually. It was like the opposite of what we did last year, because that's where we sort of ended the race. Like, you know, the last 10Ks of the race was around Piedmont, but this time it was the first 10Ks. It was also the area where I cramped last year, so this year I was like, yeah, you know, we're off to a good start, no cramps, you know. Also saw Chris around the 7K mark, and I think like he was just trying to like hold it steady or something, and you know. We both had to look on our faces like, oh, this is gonna be like one of those races where it's not gonna be like a PB or a fast one. It's just warm, you know. So yeah, just told him like, hey, you know, good luck, you know. I'll see you like along the way or at the end, I guess. I was still pretty much like focused on staying calm this whole time. Have taken it pretty slow for the first 10Ks. You know, I figured after this 10K mark, I feel I'm able to like speed up now, like, you know, try to get into race pace and try to see how it goes, I guess. But unfortunately, around the 10K mark, this is like before we reach Barangaroo, I started to feel hot spots on my left foot. So let's say like this is my left foot, and this is like the toes, I guess. And there's like little bones here for each like toe, I guess. I think they call like metatarsals, and like the 5th metatarsals, which is like the for the pinky, I guess, the pinky toe. Like that area started getting hot spots, and like I knew straight away, like this usually happens if like my feet swells and like, you know, just the shoes are too narrow in general, and like I was like, oh no, this sucks, you know. So pretty much how I felt was like I was starting to feel like a bit of like squeeze, I guess. That left metatarsal area was just like starting to like get really hot, I guess. I was like, oh no, this is like a bad sign. Like it can like eventually lead to a blister, or like, you know, I don't know if this is true, but maybe like stress fractures as well. I don't know. I was starting to get pretty paranoid, and at the same time, like my toes are starting to go numb. At this point, I was like starting to panic a tiny bit. I was like, there's absolutely nothing I can do right now to like make this better, except to like change my form or like try to run really lightly. I feel like maybe I could like stopped and took off my sock or something, but then I don't know. But yeah, pretty much like hot spots were starting to happen. My toes were starting to go numb, and I had to really like decide now, like, do I keep going in this condition and like try to speed up to race pace, or do I just try like slow down a bit and like change my form a bit, like, you know, take a bit slow, or like run a bit lighter, like, you know, and then hopefully it will go away, which wasn't gonna happen. I feel like this kind of thing doesn't really go away, I guess. It just gets worse as the conditions get worse, or as the race progresses. At this point, I feel like my A goal of like, you know, 2 hours 50 or so was like out the window. I feel like I could probably still squeeze in like a sub 3 hour, but I feel like I had to treat like a long run instead. So yeah, I pretty much just toned it down, started changing my running form a bit, started to treat like a long run, and like try to stay really calm and relaxed as possible for the rest of the race, you know. Although the hot spots never went away after this point, and the numbness stayed the whole way. Hotspots never developed into anything else after the race, I guess, and also I didn't get any black toes or anything afterwards. But so yeah, pretty much from 10-15Ks, I started to slow down to like my long run pace, and I was like, oh well, you know, it can't be helped, I guess. So yeah, there were some really massive uphills around the 15 to 16 kilometer mark, you know, heading towards like Hyde Park. It wasn't that bad because it's still early in the race, I'd say. And then between the 15 to 20 kilometer mark, I think that's where we start heading down towards like Centennial Park, through like more park and stuff. I think a lot of it was like either flat or downhill. At around 20K mark, which is like around Centennial Park, there was like a few more hairpin turns, and I finally saw the 3 hour paces. There was still like at least a good like 1 kilometer away, but like, you know, at one of the hairpin turns I saw them like going by, and in my mind I was like, oh my god, it took this long to like catch up to the 3 hour paces. I don't think I can like really overtake them that much for the rest of the race, I guess. And then around the 27k mark, I saw Morgan. Like, I haven't seen him anywhere for the whole race, I guess, except for the start. And yeah, like, finally seen him now. And then, like, apparently he was having, like, some pretty bad cramps, I guess. Like, you know, some hamstring, like, glutes, quad, like, pretty much, like, a full leg cramp, I guess. And, like, he was, like, barely, like, hobbling along. He was telling me how he got cramps and stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's, like, a drink station up ahead. And, you know, he's like, yeah, you know, didn't look like it was going to be great. After the drink stations, like, I pretty much told him, like, I'm going to try to go ahead and, yeah, I'll see you after the race. From the 30 to 35k mark, we were pretty much, like, heading from, like, Centennial Park all the way out to, like, Moore Park, I guess, and, like, heading back to, like, the city. At this point, I was still feeling decent. I wasn't getting cramps. I wasn't feeling, like, too hot or anything. I was pretty much just going steady at this point. Every time I had the urge to, like, speed up a bit, and then I gave it a try, like, the numbers just got a bit worse. I had to, like, really stay focused and, like, concentrate at this point, because, like, the best thing I could do at this point, like, is just pretty much, like, to hold onto my pace and, like, try to keep my form as much as possible. Because I changed my form, my body had to compensate in other ways, so, like, it was, like, less efficient. Since it was, like, less efficient, I had to, like, concentrate more and more and, like, stay more focused, and that requires a lot of energy as well. The longer this race went, the more tired I was going to get. And then given it a heat, I was going to get more tired anyway. And pretty much the whole thing overall leads to, like, a high chance of cramps if I'm not really careful. So yeah, pretty much felt like a balancing act, you know, to try to somehow finish without like, being tempted to go faster or to make things worse, I guess. But yeah, pretty much from the 30km mark, I knew that if I didn't cramp here, I feel like I was in a pretty good position to finish the rest of the race without getting cramps. But there was still a chance it might happen because the fact that I changed my form and also the conditions of the day. So yeah, I just really had to focus and stay concentrated the whole way. So from the 35k to the 40km mark, it's pretty much from Moore Park all the way to like the Royal Botanic Garden. There was like way less hairpin turns now, which is great. By the time I reached Royal Botanic Gardens, I was still feeling fairly decent. There was also like a massive uphill forming at the Royal Botanic Gardens towards like Miss McCrory's chair, and I was like, oh no, this is probably where I'll start getting cramps if I don't slow down, I guess. So at this point, it's like around the 39 to 40km mark. I feel like I've done a pretty good job at staying relaxed so far. So this is not the point where I want to like mess up and like just go fast or anything, or even like go slightly faster on the hill. So pretty much just slow down more than usual. Took a bit easy. After I got through the hill though, I started to feel like the chances of a cramp happening right now, if I don't stop or like slow down, was gonna be really high. Luckily, at this point, I reached the 40km drink station. So yeah, I pretty much just slow down to like a walk at the drink station, got like a drink slowly, you know, walked a bit more, then felt much better. So then I just got back into like jog and get back to like my long run pace, I guess. It was only my left quad though, so I feel like that's probably because of all the hairpin turns I was doing, and also the fact that I changed my running form because of the hot spots on my left foot, I guess. But yeah, like pretty much narrowly avoided a cramp, but I had to like really slow down and walk at some point. So yeah, like that probably cost me like a good 30 seconds or a minute or so, but doesn't really matter, I guess. And then pretty much the last 1 to 2 k's is gonna be all downhill all the way towards Opera House. At this point, I knew I wasn't gonna finish under 3 hours, so the best thing I can do is probably like just hold it steady and just try and finish as strong as I can without like another cramp happening, I guess. The potential cramp feeling was pretty much gone, so yeah, just took a pretty chill down for last Ks, and I finished like in around 3 hours, 1 minute and 31 seconds. Massive PB from last year. I think like that's like 28 minutes of PB. Got my finishers medal. Head up to like the little finishing area. Got some water, got some banana, got some fixed drinks. Then I waited for the other guys to finish. And then pretty much checked out the post-race like recovery village, you know, in the rest of the Royal Botanic Gardens. Met up with the other guys, met up with some of the roads runners. Also met up with Colin. He's like one of the subscribers of this channel. Had a little chat. It was wonderful. And then checked out more of the post-race recovery village. It was quite fun overall. Got some free stuff here and there. And then afterwards grabbed some food. Let's go through some other experiences during the race. Like in terms of like hydration and electrolytes. So yeah, pretty much stopped at every water station and got water as much as I could, and then got like electrolytes as well at every like 5km mark. My energy gel plan, yeah, pretty much stuck to it for the most part, and I think that went fine. I did manage to grab gels on the table as I was planning on the 20 and the 30km mark. They gave us like some pretty good goo gels this time. It was like the Octane one or something, and that was pretty nice and tasty as well. Pretty much stuck to my hydration electrolyte plan, and I think that went fine. In terms of the pre-race meal, I think that was fine. I didn't get hungry at any point during the race. In terms of the course, I would say that this course is tougher than last year's. I feel like there's more narrow sections along the course. There's also a lot of like rough, broken like pavement as well. It was a bit more hilly this time, especially at the 40km mark, you know, at the Royal Botanic Gardens. But I feel like it wasn't too fast at the course at all. It's pretty much something that you couldn't change, and yeah, and honestly, it was pretty fun. In terms of the weather, it was pretty much warm as forecasted. You know, it started off at 18 degrees or so. That's like around 7 AM, and you know, pretty much when I finished the race at like 10 AM, it was probably like around 25, 26 degrees, which wasn't too bad. I didn't feel that bothered by the heat at all. Surprisingly, I feel like it'd be much warmer and like more tough for those people who are gonna finish like later on, like around noon or like a bit later. Okay, let's go through some of the lessons I learned from this race for next time, I guess. So where do I even begin? The first one's probably the shoes. As you will know, I wore my Saucony Dolphin Pro Freeze in this race, and I only wore it twice during training in the lead up to the race. The first time I wore it was in my final tune-up race. It was like a 10k race, and I didn't experience any discomfort then. I feel like that's because it was cool weather that day, and I'm only doing 10ks compared to like 42ks. So the chance that my feet were gonna expand or swell, or like the chance that you'll see these like discomforts appear in like a little 10k race that was kind of cool, I guess, wasn't really high. After I bought the shoe and tried it on at home, I knew that the fit was like slightly narrow. It wasn't like super narrow, it wasn't super bad by any means, but it wasn't as accommodating or wide as my Dolphin Speed Freeze, for example. I thought like it wouldn't be an issue during the race, I guess, and it wasn't an issue in the tune-up race, but that's just a short distance race. It wasn't even like a marathon pace in the long run either. And then the second time I wore the shoe was in the dress rehearsal. That was like a really short run again. Didn't really have much discomfort there. I feel like I did a big mistake there by not like trying out the shoes in like at least one long run or like at least one marathon pace run in the weeks of training leading up to the race, I would have like found these issues early on, like, you know, the hot spots and like the fact that my toes get numb in this shoe. That's pretty much the biggest new thing I tried on race day, and that was like a big mistake on my part. I had to change up my form a bit during the race. At the end of the day, I feel like I handled it as best as I could. I guess for next time, I'll probably have a different shoe for my marathon race. Don't get me wrong, I still really enjoy the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3s. I'll probably still wear it from like my 5, 10K races and maybe like half marathon, but to the marathon, probably not. I guess the second thing was getting a proper start. I thought like getting there like around 6:30, which is like around, you know, 40 minutes to go before the race starts, would have been like plenty enough, but it wasn't, because like I had to account for the fact that, you know, the train was kind of delayed at Milson's Point due to how crowded it was. So that means like I already lost 10 minutes there, and then having to go to the toilet, that would have like taken off like another 10-20 minutes, I guess. And pretty much at that point, the whole starting group was already like starting to fill up heaps. Next time I feel like I should get there like around 1 hour earlier even, or even like a bit earlier as well. Last year there's probably like around what, 6,000 people racing the marathon. This year there's like around what, 17,000. That means like it's gonna be way crowded. If I'm trying to go for like a really big PB in this race or go fast, I should try like line up accordingly. Start pretty much close to the 3 hour paces, and because I started quite far back relative to my goal, I feel like, yeah, that already dictated a big part of the race, and I had to like really take it easy at the start. I was planning to take it really easy from the start anyway, but I was talking about like around 4:10 pace, not like 5-minute pace, I guess. But yeah, pretty much next time I'd like to get like a really proper start. I didn't really do that this time, and that's kind of a shame on my part, I guess. And then the last thing I want to mention is like, maybe I could have worn a singlet. I wore my normal t-shirt that time, and I feel like it didn't bother me throughout the whole race at all, surprisingly. The heat was definitely there, but at the same time, it didn't really bother me that much for the race. The hot spots and the toe numbness was like way worse, you know. I feel like I could have like done a PB in these conditions if I like, you know, prepared all those things better. The heat wasn't that much of a big deal, but I feel like wearing a singlet would have made me feel a bit cooler throughout the whole race. That would have helped in some way, I guess. That's pretty much the things I could have changed, I guess. The other things like, you know, the weather, the course, those kind of things that you can't really change. So yeah, I pretty much accept that really early on. But the things I could have changed are the things I should have accounted for before the race, I guess. And that's a bit of a shame on my part. But now that I know, it's definitely something I'll have to like really consider for the next time I do a marathon, I guess. The other thing I want to quickly talk about is also how I handled this race, given the circumstances and also the conditions of the day. You know, after the race, hindsight is 2020. I feel like part of me says I should have just like gone hard for it, you know, risk the cramps, try to get like around 250 to 255 if possible, you know, just soldier through basically. But I feel like throughout this 18 weeks of training, I feel like I've handled it pretty well, and I've been really big into like comfort for this whole training. And during the race, once comfort got thrown out the window, I had to quickly decide, do I just like go crazy, just to give it my best shot, just go harder and see how it goes, and like, you know, maybe suffer for it, or just like turn it back a bit and then treat like a long run instead and just try to finish in one piece and then come back another time and try to get it. It kind of feels like a cop out because I didn't really give it my all in this race. I really had to hold back and like stay relaxed and calm throughout. Part of me regrets that a bit, but based on how I've approached my training, I don't feel like I had it in me to like push myself that much at all during the race, given what happened, I guess. I know that if I've gone harder, those hotspots would have developed into blisters or like something worse, or potentially maybe like some severe injury, even like black toenails at the end, like maybe a stress fracture. Again, I'm just paranoid there. I don't even get a stress fracture from that. Looking back now, I'm really happy with how my race went over what could have happened if I'd pushed harder and then barely scraped through like my sub 3 goal and get like a 258 or something, but like all broken and like unhappy, you know, a bit disappointed. And then the other thing is, part of me was thinking like, should I have gone like at goal pace for like the first 10Ks or even like the first 21Ks, you know, go pretty hard for the first half. Even though I pretty much started middle, you know, that means I got like, you know, dodge and weave, I guess. But yeah, like, should I have done that and then like, you know, pretty much fade away for the second half? And then given that, I feel like I still would have finished like around 255 or something. But then I was thinking, is that really the way I want to like approach these races? I don't know. Again, I feel like it's a bit of a cop out or like a bit of a coward move to like scale back and treat like a long run doing this race. But at the same time, I'm not too fussed either. I feel like there's always more time for training, and you know, I'm going to come back for this kind of race like next year anyway. But yeah, I was thinking there's a lot of ways I could have approached this race, even with the circumstances and the conditions. Thinking about it now, I feel like, yeah, the way I did it was probably the best I could have done. I don't want to really set the precedent for myself where I just like go hard, destroy my body during the race, and then barely meet the goals I was aiming for. That's not really the type of runner I am. I'm pretty big on preparation and like training and like doing well. And like when things don't go that well, there's always a part of me that wants to go reckless, but I'd much rather play it safe if I can, and then come back for another time. And I feel like I finished this race in like fairly good condition. To me, that's what matters more than like putting it all out there and like risking it. So yeah, overall, a slightly disappointing outcome for me. I'm not too fast because I feel like there's heaps of lessons I learned for this time that I can apply for next race, I guess. Okay, so what's next for me, I guess? So first, I really got to prioritize recovery. As part of this marathon training program, there's actually like 5 weeks worth of recovery. But because I feel like I didn't really push myself that hard during the race, I might not have to do like that many recovery weeks. I'll probably do at least 2 to 3 recovery weeks. That pretty much means like no workouts for like 2 to 3 weeks. That means like no intervals, no tempo workouts, no long runs. pretty much just like recovery runs and maybe a bit of like aerobic runs slowly, and like maybe some strides in like the second or third week, I guess. From then on, I was planning to just train for like short distance races, I guess. No matter how this marathon training or the race would go, I was gonna go back to like short distance racing, like 5 or 10Ks, I guess. Especially because like spring's here and like summer's around the corner, and it's gonna be like a very warm rest of the year. So yeah, I don't really want to train for endurance like for the rest of the year. Yeah, pretty much just train for like some fast 5 to 10Ks, I guess. In terms of like weekly mileage, I'll probably aim for like around 70 to 80 kilometers. No more like 100K weeks for the rest of this year, I think. And yeah, and see how that goes, I guess. Like unfortunately for marathon training, pretty much done for this year. I feel like realistically, I only have it in me to do like 1 or 2 marathon training cycles a year. In terms of redemption, I'm not sure what kind of marathon I'll do next year, but I will be back, whether it's like Sydney Marathon or like some other marathon. But I really enjoyed the Sydney Marathon. I know there's other marathons that have like relatively easy conditions, like in terms of like weather and like temperature and that kind of stuff, and even like course profile, like yeah, it's flatter or like that kind of stuff. But that doesn't bother me. The fact that Sydney Marathon was like very hilly or like very narrow, that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed the course. I can still expect the PB there. I might be back for the Sydney Marathon next year, and again, it'll probably be the same type of training, but we'll have to see how it goes. Training for the marathon is definitely a big time commitment, but I'm glad I did this whole like 18-week training program at least once. I've learned heaps from it so far. I've built a lot of fitness from it as well. Did I accomplish the goal I was going for? Not really, but at the same time, I really enjoyed training. So yeah, even if the race didn't go that well, training has gone well, and it's only gonna be better moving forward, hopefully. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this marathon training, I guess. For all of you guys out there who raced at the 2023 Sydney Marathon, whether it's the family fun run or the 10K or the half marathon or the full marathon, given the conditions out there, like you guys did a great job. Well done, and you should be really proud of yourself. Yeah, hopefully recovery goes well. Make sure you prioritize recovery. Take it easy for like at least 1 or 2 weeks, you know. And also feel free to let me know in the comments down below how your race went as well. I'm definitely interested to hear how it went for you guys. I'll likely be back next year, and you know, we'll see how it goes, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much all to say for now. Thanks again for all of your support so far. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully like you guys enjoyed the series and like learned something or two, you know. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.